project ongoing titled on thermal management of continuous and pulse heating based electronic components by using a heat sink with phase change materials. Funding agency IEI R&D. And also he applied one patent title a novel biaxial solar tracker using one motor. Present status of patent amendment stage. He also published 36 international journal papers, 30 international conferences, and 8 national conferences. And also he authored 2 book chapters. His research interests are CFD, computational fluid dynamics, heat transfer, thermal energy storage, utilization of solar energy, and phase change material. Coming to his achievements, secured first prize in visualization developed competition in year 2010 held at Texas A&M University at Qatar. Secured third prize in poster competition held at Texas A&M University. And also he's guided 7 PhD scholars are registered under his guidance. Myself completed, 1 student submitted thesis, and 5 students are ongoing. He's delivered 15 guest lectures around the country. And also he reviews some journals names Applied Thermoengineering elsewhere, IEI series, Springer, Journal of Solar Energy Engineering, ASME, Thermal Science and Engineering Progress elsewhere, and Heat Mass Transfer Springer. This is brief biodata of today resource person. Sir, we are eagerly waiting for interactive section. Thank you very much, sir. Over to coordinator.
Thank you, Siri sir. Thank you very much. Now, I invite our resource person, Dr. D. Jay Krishna Garu, to deliver the technical talk. Sir, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Suri, for a very nice introduction. And before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Professor Shastri, head of the department, Mechanical Engineering Department, Goodwell Engineering College, and coordinator Dr. Kiran and Dr. Suri, who has continuously coordinated with me for this particular session. So I also thank the management of Goodwell Engineering College for giving me this opportunity. Okay. Today, my topic of presentation is phase change materials and its applications, classification, and selection criteria. So, this is one of the very hot area, I can say. It is an emerging field and it has huge applications also. And today's motivation for my presentation is as several people have asked me, so I want to work on like phase change materials, like what area I should work on and how to start with, and how to get these thermophysical properties and what else need to be studied. So these things are like whatever queries that were raised to me, I thought like it will be helpful if I can keep this in terms of a presentation. Okay. So first, phase change materials means you can see on the first slide itself. On the left hand side, I have given you one candle that we generally see in our daily life, and right side, like it is a formation of ice. The left one is an example of melting, and the right side is nothing but your solidification process. Generally, if you see a candle, when we light it, the wax gets melted and it forms to liquid state, and this liquid wax will come to the bottom portion because of gravity, and it is going to get solidified. So solidify means what is happening over there. So the heat that is taken by the wax, it is again given to the surrounding because surrounding temperature is less, and it is getting solidified. And towards your right hand side, initially you are pouring some liquid, and if you reduce the temperature, it is going to get solidified. So the left one is a very good example of melting, what we generally see in our daily life, and right side is nothing but your solidification process. So the organization of my today's presentation is, first I'll be giving the introduction of phase change materials. Then why it is necessary for us to go with PCM? Why not something else? Because there are so many materials that are available, like sensible heat storage materials and so on. And next, most important is, if you have phase change materials, you can say like it is in hundreds in number. So how to classify this? On what basis I have to select for my application? Next, once I'll just give like briefly to the maximum possible extent, I have covered like maximum number of applications, and I'll be discussing what are the various applications where these phase change materials can be employed. And after that, there are some few basic terms that will be necessary for us to understand. So I'll be discussing those things also. Next, most important part, measurement of thermophysical property. For example, if I want to use a phase change material, there are few things like melting point and latent heat and other thermophysical properties. How to measure these things, where these things are available. If someone wants to do some research in this particular area, where to approach, what equipment to use, so that information I'll be giving. So once it is done, what I'll be doing is I'll be briefly going through compatibility of PCM with metals. Like if you want to have an efficient long-term some storage container, it can be for a thermal equipment or it can be for a thermal energy storage or whatever application it is. So for that, actually, we need to understand about compatibility and stability studies also. Finally, I'll be briefly concluding my session. So if you just see what is a phase change materials, the name itself, abbreviation for phase change materials, like we can say it as PCM, is a substance which releases or absorbs sufficient energy at phase transition to provide useful heating or cooling. For example, if you take ice that we generally see right from our childhood, if you keep ice outside, ice at one particular temperature, initially it may take some time. Then what we can see is slowly water will be coming out and its volume gets shrunken. So that is nothing but our melting process. So usually the name itself will give you if you are storing or releasing the heat, and for that particular material, if a phase change is taking place, then you can call that thing as a phase change material. Okay. So the left hand side figure, whatever I have given you, is like for our understanding sake. Usually, I'll just explain with some example of ice. Let us take ice. Let us take, like we kept this thing in a deep freezer, which is now around some minus 10 degrees centigrade. So when you keep that thing outside, exposed to our environment, what is going to happen? Initially, there will be a sensible heat. So ice at minus 10 degrees centigrade will absorb the heat from the atmosphere, and it changes to ice at 0 degrees centigrade. So minus 10 to 0 degrees centigrade is nothing but sensible heat. So this thing we will be giving is it as MCP delta T. Next, ice at 0 degrees centigrade, which is in solid form, takes the heat, and again it gets converted to water at 0 degrees centigrade. This is nothing but your latent heat. And now what is going to happen is, once it attains at 0 degrees centigrade water, it totally gets melted. Then it takes the heat again, because outside atmosphere temperature, let us take it, is around 30 degrees centigrade. So it reaches to equilibrium, maybe from ice at water at 0 degrees centigrade to liquid at water at 30 degrees centigrade. So when you are considering a phase change material, this particular part is also equally important. So there will be a sensible heat portion, there will be a latent heat portion, and again there will be a sensible heat portion. So if you take an ideal phase change material, these things, heat transfer takes by sensible heat as well as latent heat. So this particular figure, whatever I have given you, is like most idealistic case. Why? Because the melting here is taking place at constant temperature. But generally, if you take any phase change material, what is going to happen is there will be a range, there will be a mushy zone where it may take some 5 degrees or 2-3 degrees centigrade depending upon the phase change material that we take. And this is what it is going to happen. So it is in liquid state at 30 degrees centigrade. Once you start extracting heat from this particular case, again it comes back in this particular case in this direction. But whatever I'm explaining here is the most idealistic case. In practical situation, we cannot mimic this particular graph. It will be slightly deviating, and this also will not be too straight. It does not happen at constant temperature. So that is nothing but fusion, or it undergoes crystallization and again converts to solid. Okay, the right hand side, I have given a small video. This is nothing but usually the surrounding temperature is this particular cylinder, whatever you are seeing, in that phase change material is placed, and there is a center heater, the black portion, and surrounding water temperature is maintained lower temperature than that of melting point temperature. So here what is going to happen is, initially it is in liquid form. So once you keep this thing in this cold surrounding temperature, it is going to happen, this heat will be extracted, this liquid will be taking the heat from the PCM, and it starts crystallizing, and the crystallization takes place in this particular manner, depending upon at what point this cold temperature is there and in what direction heat is getting dissipated. So this is one example for solidification process, and usually for PCM it takes in this particular manner. So the next point is
Sir, excuse me. Sorry for the disturbance, sir. Sir, voice is a bit low, sir. Can you please be a bit louder?
Okay, sir. I'll do one thing. Please hold on for a minute.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. Is it fine now?
Oh, okay, sir. Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
So now the question comes like, why phase change material? Why not something else? Why not sensible heat material and so on? So one of the main advantage of phase change material is it has very high energy storage density. So, and one more thing is that if you take any sensible heat storage material like a rock or water, generally we use on our solar water heating system, this phase change material occupies something like 5 to 14 times less volume when compared to sensible heat storage material. And one more thing is that one of the very good advantages that we can have is the phase change or the heat extraction or release takes place at nearly constant temperature. So this because of these advantages, these phase change materials are being employed in huge number of applications. So just for the sake of comparison, if you see, if you take material as a rock, generally rocks, pebbles, sand, these are used as like sensible heat storage materials. If you take this one, it is around, if it stores, if you want to store 10 power 6 kilojoules in 1 kg, so it takes around like 67,000 kgs of rock. And in the same way, it takes around 16,000 kgs of like water. So in the same way, from volume point of view, it is like 30 meter cube and 16 meter cube. And obviously we know this, like it is like a specific heat values. But if you take a latent heat material, and obviously there are several organic and inorganic phase change materials, which I'll be giving you in the next slide, the classification of phase change materials. So usually if it has like, it does have a latent heat of around 190 to 220 kilojoules per kg, and inorganic has a little bit higher latent heat. Now this volume is relatively less. The amount of mass that we use is relatively less. And if you just see the volume that is occupied by this phase change materials is very less when compared to that of sensible heat storage materials. This is why like it has become a very promising option. Obviously, it does have several other drawbacks also, which I'll be discussing later. And you just see here, like if you take inorganic phase change materials, it takes only around 2.7 meter cube. So our thermal equipment can become very, very compact. So the space or volume that is occupied by that particular equipment, if you are using phase change materials, it becomes very small and it will satisfy our needs. So if you see the basic classification of phase change materials, it is broadly classified into 4 types. One is like gas liquid, solid gas, solid liquid, and solid solid phase change materials. First, I will come with this one, solid solid. So you might be wondering, like, he's saying solid solid phase change material. So there is no phase change that is taking place over here. So how can it be a PCM? The point here is solid phase change material. It changes from one crystalline structure to the other crystalline structure. So once it takes the heat materials, for example, PEG 6000, PEG 3000, like the different materials is there. We call this thing as also as a shape stabilized PCM. So it is not going to convert to liquid state, but it will be there in solid state. But only thing what is going to happen is once it takes a particular amount of heat, once it attains the phase transformation temperature, it changes from one crystalline structure to the other crystalline structure. Now let us go back with the three types: gas, liquid, solid gas, and solid liquid. Generally, if you take water, let us take water itself. Solid liquid means water is converting to ice. Gas liquid means, for example, vapor, and it is converting to water. And again, solid gas. Solid gas, we do have like several examples, like naphthalene bonds that we use in our daily life, camphor. So what is going to happen? Dry ice, where what is going to happen is, this obviously there is no liquid phase, it directly changes at atmospheric pressure. It changes directly from solid to that of gas. Now the point is, if you just observe, if you take water, water latent heat of fusion, it is around like 334 kilojoules per kg. And if you take gas and liquid, that means latent heat of vaporization, it is around 2257 approximately, 2250 kilojoules per kg. So generally, if you are using some PCM where it is converting to liquid to gas, usually that latent heat is more when compared to by referring to water as our PCM. Okay, so this is only for 334 and it is around 2250. So the point is like the question comes: can we go with this one? No. Why? Because when you have a phase change material, when it is converting to a vapor phase, the volume that is occupied by that particular container or like by that particular PCM is very, very high. So you need to have a huge volume. And one more thing is that if you want to retrieve the heat back, we need to do some external work so that if you want to tap the heat back. So one thing is that the volume requirement, if you have a PCM which is converting to one phase to gaseous phase, and another thing is, in order to extract the heat back, you need to do some external work. So that is why this gas liquid and solid gas PCMs are ruled out. We generally don't go for it. So now that is why whatever PCMs that we work on, it will be on solid liquid phase change materials. So now, if you just try to classify the solid liquid PCMs, you can broadly classify as organic PCM, inorganic PCM, and eutectics. So what things can come under organic PCMs? So usually, and this is not finalized one, I have tried to give an approximate range. Usually, organic PCMs can be classified under paraffins, that means paraffin wax or candle, and next fatty acids, esters, and one more thing is alcohols. Usually, all these things comes under like organic PCMs. And in general, in organic PCMs, it usually you have a wide range of like temperature. Usually, like even for power generation also, generally inorganic PCMs are used because the temperature is low. You can have like salts, metallic compounds, salt hydrates, metalloids, and so on. Next, you have like eutectics. Eutectics is nothing but combination of organic inorganic PCM or organic PCM or inorganic PCMs. Eutectics is basically if you are trying to add two different PCMs, okay, then you can call that thing as a eutectic PCM. So why you need to go for this is, sometimes you selected one organic PCM whose melting point is around 35 or 40 degrees centigrade. Now what is happening? You have some another PCM which has some melting point of around 50. Generally, inorganic PCMs have good thermal conductivity. But if you want to have like a better PCM where you want to have an advantage of both these PCMs, then what people tried is they tried to mix with the different combinations so that you can get a PCM whatever you are in need of. So that it will satisfy your thermophysical properties for your application. That is why this Eutectics has come into picture to fine tune or like to get the properties whatever we need of. So now if you see like because there are several problems. It, obviously PCMs are like very promising, but there are several problems are like difficult research. So let us see what are its merits and demerits. If you take organic PCMs, generally organic PCMs you do have for a wide range and it is good compatibility. In my latest, what do you mean by compatibility? Compatibility in the sense means obviously this PCM should be kept in some container and this PCM should not corrode or eat the container materials. So that is what it means like compatibility. It should be chemically stable. That means as we go on with time, its thermophysical properties should not get changed. And generally, if you have like organic PCMs, its latent heat of fusion is like that means latent heat is relatively high. Obviously, it is safe and non-reactive, and you can recycle it. The main disadvantages of organic PCMs is it has low thermal conductivity. Volumetric latent heat storage capacity is low when compared to that of inorganic PCMs. And one of the main problem with organic PCMs is once it attains higher temperatures, some of the organic PCMs are flammable in nature, and it is like a little bit costly when compared to that of inorganic PCMs. If you just observe about inorganic PCMs, the cost is less when compared to that of like organic PCMs. It does have a sharp melting point. What do you mean by sharp melting point? I'll be explaining when I'm explaining about like DSC, one of the experiment method by which you can find the melting point. Sharp means if you have a melting point, for example, let us take some paraffin wax which has around 45 degrees C. So practically it will not have exactly at 45 degrees centigrade. So the melting starts around 43 and it may end around 46. So if this difference is less, you can say that thing is nothing but sharp melting point. Usually the thermal conductivity is high when compared to that of organic PCM. See, like especially for this thermal conductivity high means don't think it is around like 500 watt per meter Kelvin or so. Usually the thermal conductivity is more and it is less than 1 watt per meter Kelvin, and it is a little bit more when compared to that of organic PCMs. Actually, thermal conductivity is one of the main drawbacks for the PCM. I'll be explaining in the later stage like in what way you can avoid this and what are the various methods you have. And it has relatively high latent heat when compared to organic, low volume change, non-flammable. Now, in the demerits from inorganic PCM, it underscores supercooling. Supercooling means usually, let us take, I would like to cite this one by explaining ice to water. So when you supply some heat to ice, it converts to water. Now, water, once you cool or extract heat from water, what is going to happen? Water should be converted back to ice. But usually, it should happen at 0 degrees centigrade. At 0 degrees centigrade, it should be converting to ice. But most of the PCM, or not all the PCMs, some of the PCMs do have like a subcooling problem. That means instead of getting solidified at 0, it starts solidifying at 0 and it may get solidified at minus 10 degrees centigrade or minus 15 degrees centigrade. And obviously it is corrosion. This is one of the main drawbacks and nucleating agent. There is something called phase segregation, congregant aspects, but these are the two problems that inorganic PCMs have. Otherwise, actually, these are like considered to be very, very promising because the cost is also less and it is easily available. And regarding Etectix, usually if you want to have a sharp melting point, Etectix, like you combine like two different PCMs and get this particular thing. But obviously, a lot of work is need to be done here. And volume storage density is high. Why? Because we are fine tuning a hybrid PCM based on combining like two different types of PCM. As I mentioned, it can be organic inorganic or organic inorganic. So the main problem is that relatively when compared to organic and inorganic PCMs, very, very less work has been done in Etectic PCMs because you do have like several combinations of like weight ratio or volume percentage ratio. You do have several combinations. So a lot of work is still there, especially to work on from thermophysical point of view and compatibility point of view, especially from Etectics. So now the point is like, okay, if you just Google phase change material, so what is going to happen is you will get some hundreds of phase change materials. Now the question comes, what material should I take? How should I select from those hundreds of PCMs? Even if you see some review articles on phase change materials, you'll get some huge list. List is like it will keep on going. So this is one of the major confusion like most of the researchers have on who starting this PCM work. First and most important, if I have an application, let us take, I want to work on thermal management of electronics and I want to maintain this heat sink or like thermal equipment temperature to be around 40 degrees centigrade. So what should happen? I should select a PCM which has a melting point in that particular range, something like 35 to 36 or 38. So first and most important property for the selection of PCM is the melting point of that PCM should be in the temperature range of the application. This is one. And when we are selecting, this is one. Next most important thing is high latent heat. So you can shortlist some PCMs which has like melting point in that but application temperature, right? And the latent heat to be like primary criteria for the selection of PCMs. And obviously next comes secondary criteria is that small volume changes on phase transformation. That means if it is converting from one form to solid to liquid phase, the volume expansion should not be very, very high. It should be as minimum as possible. And congruent melting. So what do you mean by congruent melting? Is when the phase transformation takes place, usually the composition should not get changed, which I'll be explaining in the later stage. And whatever materials that we are taking, it should have high thermal conductivity. That means thermal conductivity should be as high as possible. Now, one more thing is that long-term chemical stability. Usually, if you just keep a PCM for a very long time, and if you are using for a duration of, let us take 5 years, the thermophysical properties and its chemical structure should not get changed. So that is what it means like stability. I'll just give some a few details about this one also. It is reversible. It should not be like non-toxic. It should be non-flammable and non-explosive. It should not get degraded. That means sometimes the materials gets degraded and whatever melting point and latent heat we have selected, but those things will get changed. Those values will come down. So it may not be suitable for an application. Compatibility, that means it should not be like, it should be compatible with the container materials. And obviously, economic criteria, it should be easily available and the cost also should be as minimum as possible. So if you are selecting a PCM in a nutshell, what we need to do is like first melting point and latent heat should be selected based on this. This is primary selection criteria. And selection criteria, secondary selection criteria should be all these things. So this is like, that is why selecting a PCM is a very tricky aspect. So even all the things are very good. But if it is very, very expensive and it is hardly available, then we will not even go for it. So that is why, based upon these aspects, we have to select a PCM. So now I'll be going with the application. So Dr. Suri, is it fine? Is it audible? Hello, coordinators, please.
Yes,
Should
sir.
I
It is
go ahead?
audible, sir.
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Okay, fine. Yeah. In case if you have any issue, please let me know, because I am having simply my presentation only in front of me. So if there is an inconvenience or difficulty, please let me know. Okay. So now PCMs for solar energy utilization. First, I will start with how can these PCMs be used for effectively tapping solar energy. Before that, because it is a very common platform, students will be coming from different backgrounds. I thought of giving like couple of slides for this. So like you all know, why we need to go for like renewable energy sources. One of the major causes global warming. So what do you mean by global warming? Actually, like we burn fossil fuels, and once we burn these fuels, it releases a lot of gases, and these gases get accumulated in our atmosphere, and it forms a layer such that it will be allowing lower wavelength radiation, and it becomes opaque for larger wavelength radiation. So because of which the average earth temperature increases. And one more thing is that once the average earth temperature increases, the ice over the poles actually will be increasing. And one thing is that the sea level also will be rising. And this is what we have been listening for a very long time. Now, researchers these days, they mentioned about one more problem also. What is that is, generally near the poles, the ice was formed because of the lower temperature over there, and in that ice it seems like there are a lot of virus that was present, and this is a new thing that scientists started explaining. So once this global warming is increasing, it is not only about raising sea level. Because of this also we can see so many different diseases are coming up, and the only one advantage I can say that we can see with this corona is that only the amount of like gas atmosphere has significantly come down. So, but it has all the problems that we are facing now. So this is one thing, and the point is, do these gases is necessary? Actually, yeah, we do need to have these greenhouse gases. Otherwise, our Earth's temperature will be too low to live. And one more thing is that we do have like so many greenhouse gases that which cause like global warming. One is like methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous ox, NOx, nitrous oxide, sulfur dioxide, and so on, and obviously water vapor. But every time we project things only about CO2, and so on. Why? Because out of all the various greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide contributes 60% of whatever global warming we are having. That is why simply if you say greenhouse gases, we directly project only carbon dioxide, because it contributes 60% of the greenhouse gas emissions of temperature. And the question comes, see, there are like few studies which mention it is a tendency of the earth itself to raise its temperature, and automatically it is a cycle, this temperature will come down. But researchers have done some study and tried to relate the CO2 level that we are having in our atmosphere versus temperature. So this is what like the temperature of the earth is increasing, and it is like we have. So based on this only, people could conclude like because of CO2 raise, that means the ppm level of CO2 increase is there. Because of that also the temperature is getting increased. So this is like one of the proof. So now the question is, why don't we go for like other renewable energy sources that we have? Why only solar? So if you see some facts, the annual solar energy reaching the earth is around like 1.5 to 10 power 18 kilowatt hours. And based upon this energy consumption data, actually this is old, but I was not having any reliable data. That is why I kept just to have some comparison. So we require around 1.4 into 10 power 14 kilowatts. So if you just compare this, if you are able to tap 0.1% of the incoming solar radiation, that will satisfy our needs. Maybe like presently it can be like slightly high. Maybe let us take some 0.2% or 0.3%. But what is going to happen is whatever the energy that is released by the sun, everything is not falling on the earth. So because of reflection, absorption by the atmosphere, what is going to happen is the solar irradiation that it is falling on the earth on ideal conditions is around approximately 1 kilowatt per meter square. So now if you see this solar radiation map, this is annual solar radiation data, the profiles, you can observe throughout the earth it is not same. In certain locations, it is like you have a huge amount of solar radiation that is available, and certain portion it is diluted. So you can see this is nothing but annual solar radiation data. Based upon the contours, we can approximate like what is its value. And if you see this Indian context, to be very frank, like India is blessed with good solar radiation. Nearly we have around 300 sunny days on an average basis. So if you are effectively tapping this, actually we can reduce several emissions also. So this is nothing but, and it is not uniform to like there is a distribution of this particular radiation also. Now the point is, what is then why we are not able to effectively use this solar radiation? So the power density of solar radiation reaching the Earth's surface is low. That means whatever density you have, you cannot directly convert to steam or like directly run a turbine. So it needs to be like it is in diluted form. There is whatever solar radiation that we have, there is a temporal variations. That means in especially monsoon, if you see, like there will be several passing clouds, and there is a daily also, right from morning to evening, there is variation, solar radiation, and obviously depending upon the seasons also it will get changed. Next, one more difficulty is like if you take somewhere in Europe, you can hardly get the solar radiation. So throughout the Earth, you have unequal distribution on the Earth's surface. So how to overcome this? There comes the question. One thing is that as the power density is low, we can use concentrators to effectively tap it. Next, because there is a temporal variations, that seasonal variations is there, hourly variation is there, and so on, or due to the weather conditions also it may get changed. So we need to have a very good storage medium and conversion. And another thing is, okay, especially in Middle East, if you take, and India, there is like huge solar radiation, that is solar resource that is available. But then what about countries like Europe, few countries like where we hardly get any radiation? So what you do is you convert that thing to some transportation fuel and like hydrogen production and so on, and supply these fuels to that particular place. That means you are effectively tapping solar energy. So now, if you take 17 mean annual solar radiation of 1700 kilowatt hour meter square and a collector efficiency of 5%, you need to have an area of 1100 by 1100 kilometer square. So which comes to be around 2.4% of the Earth's surface area and 8.1% of the total surface area that we have, that is land. So now, how can we utilize solar energy? So one thing is that we know these things: photovoltaic panel, make use of solar cell, and directly convert to electricity, and use this through the distribution lines and so on. Another thing is like you use solar thermal devices. Actually, lot of work and lot of research was done, especially on this. But especially for the past 2-3 years, especially on this particular solar thermal area also, lot of research is being done on this. So we are going to concentrate on these things also to have some understanding of what are the various thermal systems. I try to do this. And usually depending upon the type of device, you can have different temperatures. Okay. So one more important aspect is, if you take, because we are talking even about the pollutants and so on, If you take most of the industries, 74% of the industrial energy consumption is used to meet the process heat demand. So only 26% will be like electrical energy. So, but even this heat distribution also, there is some variation, like 3200, low temperature 22% is being used, and 100 to 400 16% is used, and high temperature heat around 36% is used. Why? Because we need, if we know these things, depending upon the temperature range, we can appropriate, we select different types of like PCMs or applications or thermal devices. So, like, what are the various thermal devices we have? You can broadly classify into stationary, single axis, and biaxial tracking system. There is one more thing called like the concentration ratio. It is defined as the aperture area divided by the receiver area. So usually it is also called concentration ratio, is also called geometrical concentration ratio, and you can also call it as suns, number of suns. So if you take flat plate collector that we have in our water heating system, its concentration is 1. The average temperature that you can attain with this one is around 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. Because these things are very, very important, this understanding, for selecting any PCM or for any application. If you take evacuated tube collector, because we are reducing convection loss, you can have it relatively high temperatures. And this is a compound parabolic collector. Usually, depending upon the concentration ratio, you can even attain like 300 degrees centigrade. And Fresnel lens, it is in tubular form because at the focal point you have like a tube where the radiation gets concentrated, and through heating oil, you can tap this particular heat energy. So you can attain 250 degrees centigrade. So another thing is parabolic trough collector. We can also call this thing as a line focusing collector. You can attain nearly 300 degrees centigrade. So you have parabolic dish. It is nothing but a biaxial tracking system. Here concentration ratio can be increased. Obviously, once the concentration ratio is increased, the complexities and the cost that we need to keep for structure point of and everything increases. You can attain nearly 500 degrees centigrade. And another thing is heliostat system. You can have like very high temperatures, nearly 2000 and more than 2000 degrees C also, depending upon its concentration ratio. So what is going to happen is we do have, based on this, we do have like solar furnace also, where we can even burn or melt some metals. So we can attain that much high temperatures. Okay. Now, what I'll be doing is, first I'll be discussing about the application, the basic aspect, and to these applications, like how and where we can place this PCM. That is the point. So this is a regular solar water heating system we generally see. These are nothing but flat plate collectors. Usually its concentration ratio is 1, and this is nothing but our insulation tank. So what is going to happen? Usually we store from the overhead tank, here cold water will be there. This cold water will be coming here like this, and it gets occupied in the riser tubes. So once the solar radiation hits this particular surface, because of the buoyancy, this will try to cool and it gets heated up. This heated water will be again stored in this insulation tank. So what happens is the outlet will be directly connected to our kitchen or to our washroom, so that we can get the hot water. And usually what is going to happen is this temperature range is around 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. So this is our storage unit. We are not present systems. We are not using any PCM. It is simply a sensible heat storage medium. What happens is water from the overhead tanks comes here, and it gets heated up. And this heated water gets, because of the buoyancy, it will go up. And in this way, like, we get hot water. Now, because the solar radiation, or even if you see these days also, it is very cloudy. And then how to make use of this particular energies? There is some thermal energy storage system. Usually here, people use, researchers use even pebble, rock bed, different sensible heat storage mediums are used. So here what we do is people use PCM. This is a separate container where PCM is totally placed. Okay, so through this collector, solar radiation hits this particular surface, gets heated up, and what happens is this hot water will be initially sent to this, and this is nothing but your charging process. And during discharging process, what is going to happen is you can see a valve here. This cold water is sent through this, and it takes the heat from this PCM or like any storage medium, and it again comes back here. And from this storage tank, you can regulate the temperature and supply to your like required purpose. Now, so where these PCMs are being used, I tried to give like especially where it is being employed and so on. Actually, this is nothing but a flat plate. You have like one or two glass covers. There's an air cap, and below this air cap you have like razor tubes. Okay, through these razor tubes, water will be circulated, and it gets heated up and it goes up. So usually what is going to happen is there is a heat loss, conduction and convection loss from the bottom also. So just below this absorber plate, PCMs are placed, maybe in terms of encapsulation sachets, or it is totally filled. Now the point is like what is going to happen is whenever you have radiation, this PCM also takes the heat and it converts to liquid state. So now during night time, because solar radiation is not available, as it takes the heat and converts to liquid state, when you send cold water, because it is in contact with this particular absorber plate, this fluid or water takes the heat and this PCM gets solidified. Okay. In this way, what happens is even during night time also, once you circulate some cold water, you can have like hot water, which is approximately around 60 degrees centigrade and even 50 degrees centigrade, depending upon the type of PCM that you use. And another work that we can observe here is, I have given like references also at the bottom, whatever I used and so on. So this is one configuration, one design people worked on, and this is another design people worked on. See here, this inline tubes are there where water is being circulated, and here fins are placed so that heat dissipation is better to this absorber plate. And totally it is impregnated, like totally this PCM is filled inside. So what is going to happen, depending upon the radiation, when it takes the heat, and if that the temperature is beyond its melting point temperature, it converts to liquid state. So this heat is again retrieved or taken by the cold water which is being circulated. This is like this. What happened is like people used in different places. Like people tried in all means like how to place this PCM effectively. A lot of work is being still done. So one more thing we can say there as encapsulation. Encapsulation means, as I told previously, here it is a flat plate collector and this is storage tank, right? So generally for a sensible heat storage medium, you have simply water. Water stores here and it gets recirculated. And whenever you need, what happens is you can, by means of a pump or by means of a gravity, taking this. So people like different configurations, tried, and a lot of research works are also like available on this. One thing is that, like, if you see, these are like round spherical balls that we are seeing here. Okay, so in this you are seeing some hollow portion. This spherical balls, what they do is steel balls or some any other metallic balls. They generally fill this PCM inside. We call this thing as encapsulation. Generally, encapsulation, we can say it is in terms of micro encapsulation or macro encapsulation. This thing is called as macro encapsulation. So now this will be totally sealed and these balls will be placed here. Now what happens is when the solar radiation hits this particular surface, okay, so now this hot water will be made to pass through it. So it passes through this and it covers all the portions, and because of the gravity this will come down. By means of pump or by means of gravity basis, it again gets recirculated. So during the charging time, this takes the heat, and here whatever PCM that you are seeing here gets converted into liquid state. Now what is going to happen during night time if you are in need of some hot water or some for heating purpose? So what is going to happen is you will send cold water like this, and as this balls or spheres that we have encapsulated PCMs. Initially it is in liquid state. Once you send cold water, it gives the heat back, it converts to solid state, and again this heated water is circulated here like this, and you can retrieve the heat. So in this way actually you can have this application. This particular thing is called encapsulation. So even this kind of system, what we do is people worked on different ways. This is one particular approach, and people tried in different approaches. One thing is that you can see this dark brownish portion, whatever you are seeing on the screen, it is PCM, and this is nothing but a simple tube. So during the charging time or during daytime, what is going to happen is hot water is being circulated like this. You can see right hand side I have given some pictures. So this particular thing is referred to this. So through the center, we have hot water being circulated here like this. This is experimental setup that we have at NIT Warangal. Several research scholars are also working on it. So then what is happening is the PCM is totally in solid state, and once it takes the heat, slowly it is actually getting liquefied. You can see here, this is nothing but liquid PCM. You are seeing like somewhat brownish kind of thing here, and white portion is nothing but PCM in solid state. So this is one aspect. So this is one, and what happens is we did some research work with the fins and with the different configuration of fins, how it is behaving. Does it enhance heat transfer, or does it take or retrieve more heat or not? Like this is the work that we have the facility at NIT. This is one configuration. Another configuration is you place PCM only at the center, okay, and the surrounding you just pass some coolant through it, such that what happens is this takes the heat once during the charging time, where when you supply hot water, this PCM inside the tube gets melted, and what happens is then when you are in need of hot water, you send cold water here, then you call this thing as a discharging process. So we call that thing as alternate charging and alternate discharging process. In the same way, depending upon the amount of feed that you need, and depending upon like what is the flow rate of water that you need, what happens is different configurations were tried. So the brown portion, what you are seeing is nothing but the PCM, and white tubes is nothing but where the water is being circulated. During charging process, hot water is circulated, and during discharging process, to retrieve the heat from PCM, you send cold water. So this is how experimentally, like physically it looks like the melting process is taking place. In the same way, what happens is you can come back in the reverse order for solidification process. So totally what happens is once you send cold water from here to here, it will start solidifying. So depending upon the type of PCM configuration that we are using, this melting and solidification process also gets different. So now the question is, I want to use PCM. So this is one of the papers which I published in Journal of Energy Storage. This will help you a lot. If you just for any PCM, melting point and latent heat are there. Okay, so I want to work on solar water heating system. If you just see here, my operating temperature range is 30 to 80 degrees centigrade. So what I should do? So I can select 30 to 80 degrees centigrade any promising PCM. Whatever I have given here is a very small list. These are organic PCMs, and right side are nothing but inorganic PCMs. So depending upon that, you need to first shortlist which PCM is having melting point in that application temperature range, and among this, which PCM has highest latent heat. In the same way, you need to shortlist here as well as here. So then we can select one PCM. So like this only, if you just see literature, you will have huge several hundreds of PCMs. This is one important approach what we need to follow during the selection of a PCM. So if you just see here, this is nothing but our Fresnel reflector. Usually what is going to happen is the concentration ratio, as I mentioned, is around 110 to 40. And the temperature range that you can attain is from, depending upon the concentration ratio, you can So here at the bottom side, left hand side, you can see these are nothing but some mirrors. Okay. So usually these mirrors, single axis tracking will be there, where it tracks the sun, and depending upon the position of the sun, it will make sure solar radiation hits this particular surface and it gets concentrated at this particular focal point. Okay, this is one aspect. This you call that thing as like a Fresnel reflector, and you can, as I mentioned, you can attain to 50 degrees centigrade. And this is nothing but central receiver system. You can also call this thing as a heliostat based system. So what does a heliostat based system do is, helio means sun, from Greek point of view, helio means sun, stat means which is stationary. That means heliostat means stationary sun. So what you are going to do is, you have several mirrors like this, whatever I have shown here, in this bottom picture right hand side, you can see here. So these mirrors will track the sun, and it will make sure all the time this gets projected at this particular point, receiver point. So you can attain very high concentration ratios. Depending upon the concentration ratio also, what you can do is you can attain very high temperatures around 2000 degrees centigrade. So these systems are available in different sizes, different configurations, where even like we can even melt a metal. We can attain very, very high temperatures depending upon the concentration ratio that we are taking. So actually, to understand this, I like to take an example. Like generally, if you are going in bus, and if you want to make sure that the on your watch, when it is hitting, some radiation is hitting on your watch, and you want to project that on your friend's face. So what you do is you slightly change the angle of your wrist such that it will directly fall on the sun. There is your bus also will be moving, and obviously what is going to happen is your sun's position also gets changed. So, but what you do is you will adjust the angle in such a way it is always focal at this particular point. The same principle is applied here also, but as we receive, we need to have like very high temperatures. You can have like very high concentration, more number of mirrors will be there. So usually what is going to happen is, where we can have this phase change materials or thermal energy storage system is that. So you have like heliostat, what I have shown here is this one, and you have a central receiver system where everything, all the radiation gets focused here. So you have like different loops will be available. At one particular section, you will have like PCM. Usually for very high temperatures or power generation, you need to make use of salt hydrates, because salt hydrates generally have like very high temperatures. So that is why we generally prefer this one. So now the point is like, and again, rest of the things can be a Brayton cycle, or it can be our Rankine cycle. So if you just observe, this is also taken from one of the research article. People did use like NaNO3 and the different combinations of salt hydrates as is given here. If you observe, the melting point is also like different here. So here, whatever power plant, depending upon what concentrations ratio we have and what temperatures we can have, depending upon that, what we need to do is we need to go for the material selection. Obviously, just like material selection, what we need to do is like we need to even go with the like high latent heat values also, and the thermal conductivity also should be as high as possible. Density should be as high as possible. Viscosity, which will reduce the enhance the heat transfer. If the viscosity is very high, then the heat transfer will come down, because melting process can come down. Why? Because viscosity means convective strength will come down. So like this, all these aspects should be taken care of. Okay. Next one is like where can we apply this photovoltaic panel? If you take any photovoltaic cell, usually this is how it behaves. Actually, we have like IV characteristics, short circuit current and open circuit voltage. Usually, what happens is depending upon the radiation, if you are having like more solar radiation, you can see here, this is 600 watt per meter square, this is 800 watt per meter square, and this is 1000 watt per meter square. If you are increasing the solar radiation that is incident on the collector. Obviously, with the increase in solar radiation, the power output increases. But the point is, if you observe towards right hand side, you observe here, this is the power output that we are getting, which is in terms of watts. Obviously, with the increase in radiation, the power output will increase. But with the increase in temperature, the power output will come down. This is one of the important aspects that we need to understand. So that is why even thermal management is also very, very important, especially for this. Okay, so we need to regulate the temperature. If you keep nearly 25 degrees centigrade, the photovoltaic panels will perform better. So this is one configuration. This is a regular photovoltaic panel generally we see. So people did a lot of work also. You have a PN junction or silicon cell, and the rare portion to dissipate heat, the PCM is placed. So what is going to happen? For example, if you want to select a PCM for this, let us take our ambient temperature is something like 35 degrees. So you cannot have a PCM, you cannot select a PCM which is around like 30 degrees centigrade. Why? Because instead of heat getting dissipated, actually it will obstruct the flow of heat. Why? Because from outside heat itself, the PCM will be taking the heat and it will get melted. And because of this, what is going to happen is heat, instead of getting dissipated, it gets accumulated here, and the temperature, average temperature of the cell increases. And because what is going to happen is like the cell temperature increases, and because with the increase in cell temperature, the life of the PV cell also will come down, as well as the efficiency also will come down. This is one major problem. Generally, what is going to happen is like once this temperature increases, the reverse saturation current, it drops down, and parallelly when compared to that, the voltage also will significantly come down. So because of that, what happens is the overall power output will come. Generally, what people did is like they used the sachets and they tried to place at the back portion, and obviously you need to have some other cooling mechanism also to effectively dissipate. This is one area people are working on, and if you type or Google it, thermal management of a photovoltaic cell, then what happens is you can get a lot of research articles on this. Now, even this PCM is being used in huge like medical applications. There is something called hyperthermia and hypothermia. Generally, what happens is this is traditionally we are following this. We have some neck pain, shoulder pain, or something. We generally take a cloth, heat in water, and then once it attains one particular temperature, we will try to keep on shoulder so that the blood circulation is good. So what happens is commercially also these things are available. There is something called heat packs and cool packs. So first we need to know what is hyperthermia and what is hypothermia. Generally, our normal body temperature is around like 97 degree Fahrenheit to 99 degree Fahrenheit. So there is hypothermia means like refers to a group of heat related conditions characterized by an abnormally high body temperature. So what happens is our core temperature is also like it should be optimally maintained. And what happens is once the temperature is increasing beyond 40 degrees C or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, it undergoes like severe hyperthermia. And actually there are several health effects also when the temperature is increasing, and people will die because of that also. So what happens is generally if you are using some ice packs can be at very low temperature, and because of this once this ice also gets melted, and it can be very low temperature where the patients can suffer with cold and so many other issues are there. So that is why what happened is these ice packs, if you want to regulate the temperature or you want to fix the temperature, because the melting takes place nearly at constant temperature, you can place these ice packs, I mean to say cold packs, on that particular zone, and you can regulate the temperature. This is one advantage that we can have. Actually, you can see here at the bottom, this I have taken from some commercial site. This is the site, rubitherm.edu. So where you can see like these ice packs and cold packs are being sold. And another thing is hypothermia. Hypothermia is a medical emergency that occurs when the body loses heat at a faster rate. For example, if the body temperature is lower than 35 degrees C, it is not good for us actually. So it is actually very dangerous. And what are the symptoms that we can have is we will get confused, like we will not know what we are doing and so on. So for the treatment of like hyperthermia cases and hypothermia, what happens is this phase change materials can be considered to be a promising option. So a lot of work is being done even on this also, like selection of PCMs and how to place and so on. Another application of medical application is the transportation of blood. So usually blood, when it is transported from one place to another place, it undergoes hemolysis. What does the hemolysis means? Like the destruction of RCD, that means red blood cells, RBC. So what is going to happen is once it is transported to some vehicles, it undergoes, if it comes under some bumpy roads and so on, this hemolysis takes place. And also another thing is that because of the bad weather, that means above 30 degrees centigrade or below minus 20 degrees centigrade, this hemolysis will be experienced. And what happens is the RBC, that means the red blood cells get destroyed, and it may not be even suitable for the usage of blood. So generally, what is the suitable temperature is? The suitable temperature for this is around 1 to 10 degrees centigrade. So this is one commercially available. Actually, this is at the bottom, you can see one journal which published this particular aspect. So it is nothing but some container where it is totally encapsulated with phase change material. So what happens is this blood will be placed in terms of sachets, I mean to say like covers, and this will be placed in an encapsulated PCM. What you are seeing here, I'm pointing out my like pointer over here. This is also a PCM. So that what happens is it can regulate the temperature of the blood. So and usually this what is the material that's used here is around tetradecane. It has a melting point around 4.5 to 5.6 degrees. This is one medical application that we can have, transportation of blood, organs, human organs, and so on, because temperature is very, very crucial for these things. Now, another thing is like cold chain, vaccine cold chain. So, vaccine cold chain is that usually vaccine gets manufactured from a pharmaceutical unit, and it has to be reached to the child or mother. If you just observe, most of the vaccines, if you take oral polio, measles, yellow fever, for all these things, that operating temperature range is around 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. According to World Health Organization, WHO, and UNICEF data, whatever vaccines that are being produced, 50% of the vaccines are getting wasted because of irregular temperatures. So if you just observe, vaccine once it is manufactured, this is how it looks like, or it comes in different shapes and containers. Then it will be shifted by means of air or by road. So let us take in internationally, somewhere it is being produced in US, it has to come by air. Then you have like transit storage facilities. Next, it comes like primary vaccine store, where obviously the temperatures need to be maintained in that way. Intermediate vaccine store, then it goes to intermediate vaccine store, where it gets again distributed. Then it will be taken by healthcare center, and from their healthcare center, health workers will be taking in terms of refrigerator boxes. And finally, these people will carry these vaccines, and it will be given to child and mother. Because of not properly maintaining this temperature, several vaccines are wasted, and there were several repercussions also. Because it caused some ill effects to the people also. So what happens is generally here, power is one of the major important aspects. If you have a regular power supply, that is fine. Generally, they use some ice packs, and the ice packs also, what they have observed is certain locations only the temperature was low or very high. It is not between 2 and 8 degrees centigrade. So for this also, PCMs are considered to be a very promising option. So example for this is like C14H30, micro encapsulated 94% tetradecane, 6% tetrahydroethanol, like that, which has a melting point of these things. So we need to use these PCMs for these applications. Obviously, lot of study, lot of research also need to be done. What kind of configuration we need to use, and all the things need to be studied. But especially for this particular temperature range, this is one of the some of the promising PCMs. Now, actually, one more thing is that maintaining or regulating the temperature of the room in a building. So this is one of the very upcoming field. Generally, one work is that they directly mix PCM with cement. Okay, and they form a mixture like this. They will dry it such that you have a blended PCM cement, and this once you mix with this, you will make in terms of like bricks like this. You can see here structure of a PCM wall. You can see in our houses also they will go with plaster of Paris ceiling. Okay, so now this plaster of Paris or whatever PCM cement layer is there, it can regulate the temperature. Generally, these are placed or it is kept as a ceiling or as a particular structure to the wall. So what is going to happen is during the night time, once the temperature is low, the solar radiation what is observed, this will be in liquid state, because it is everything in terms of micro level, because we call micro encapsulated PCM is like it is in terms of powder, but each particle at micro and nano scale, inside you have a PCM. So what is going to happen? This will melt, but overall it will not become liquid and it will not ooze out. It will not come out. So, but still it is in terms of a powder. Inside only it will be in liquid state. So once the temperature drops, this heat will be again given such that because it is again given in the sense means that you can regulate the temperature of the room. For example, morning time, outside temperature is more. Okay, then what is going to happen is heat is taken to the wall and it converts to micro encapsulated PCM will be converted to liquid phase. Now during night time, what is going to happen is inside temperature has come down. Then what happens is like because there is a temperature difference, heat will flow always from higher temperature body to that of lower temperature body. This heat will be dissipating from this particular wall to the room. In that way, it might be morning or it might be evening or night time. You can regulate or maintain appropriate temperatures in the room. This is like towards your left hand side, whatever you are seeing, it is nothing but like a macro encapsulated PCM. So you are seeing here and you are seeing here, right, on the right hand side also. So it is made in terms of sachets and it is kept to the ceiling like this. So for example, inside during daytime, you do have several equipment or computers and so on. We generate a lot of heat. And even if you are doing some metabolic activity, because of that also heat will be generated. So this gets heated, the air around this gets heated up. And because of buoyancy, the warm air will go up. And because you have a PCM over there on the top, this takes the heat. And initially it is in solid phase. And as the air is giving the heat to the PCM, it gets cooler. And because of increase in density or buoyancy, the warmer air will go up and more denser air will come down. Like this, what is going to happen is the load on the air conditioners will significantly come down. And without any extra power, what happens is we can regulate this room temperature. This is one area where a lot of work is being done. Actually, greenhouse building concept and how to minimize the power consumption for a building, especially PCMs are being used. A lot of work is being done. The next example is thermal management of electronic components. So usually, if you take a processor type of i7 5960X and its wattage is around 140 watts, there is something called operating temperature range, okay, and critical temperature range. Generally, we prefer our heat processor or thermal equipment to be maintained at operating temperature range. But once it crosses the critical temperature range, what is going to happen is this will actually get spoiled, damaged. So now what happens is, for example, we have like operating temperature range of 66.8 to 72. So now what happens is we will select a PCM on this, and these are regular heat sinks. Okay, we totally fill this PCM inside this cap, and usually you can see here this is a regular processor, and above that we have a heat sink thermal splitter also with it there, and PCM is placed here. So now what is going to happen once you attain this processor attains a particular temperature, PCM takes out the heat because the latent heat is very high. It can regulate the temperature. It can regulate the processor at that particular temperature. On the right hand side, these are the curves actually. If you can observe here, the continuous curve is nothing but without PCM. Okay, and these lines are there with varying the PCM percentage. Okay. You can observe here when there is no PCM at all, within no time the temperature shooted up, maybe around 318 Kelvin. And but if you see with PCM, it took some time depending upon the volume of PCM that you are using. It took some time, and it could not it was able to restrict the temperature here to around maybe 312 Kelvin and so on. So this PCM is observed to be very, very promising even for thermal management of electronic equipment. This is another important aspect that a lot of researchers are working on. So another thing is like PCM cooling fabric. Actually, I tried to get some site also, like where we can buy these things and so on. This is commercially available. I think it is like China's website. So it is like it is coined with the Body Cool Pro. Usually, what happens is this is something like this here. You have a jacket, and inside the food stuff and so on, there will be still some metabolic activity, and there will be a heat leak to the refrigerator, obviously, because 100% the insulator we cannot have. And we open and close also, heat leak will be there. So what is going to happen is this hot air, whatever you have at the bottom, as less denser will go up, and it comes in contact with the PCM over here. It gets this PCM gets liquefied, and it becomes more denser, and it gets circulated. Okay, so this is how, like, actually even the power is lost, still we can maintain low temperatures inside the refrigerators. Especially what I heard is recently LG has this kind of system where they use PCM to the walls here, especially on the back side, and people try in different manners, so that even the power is lost also, you can have lower temperatures maintained for a very long time. That is one aspect. This is nothing but some deep freezers also, where here also you can see just adjacent to evaporating coil, this encapsulated PCM is maintained. This is taken from a research article where PCMs of different levels are being used as a trace. You can observe here, because there will be a gradient from lower portion to the topmost portion. Okay, where actually the melting point of the PCM will be different, and such that you can maintain uniform temperature throughout this refrigerator. This is another important. So PCM cold car, generally we see like milk vans and so on. Actually, especially in summer, there will be a huge wastage of spoilage of milk. Why? Because sometimes if there is a problem with the truck or some this particular functioning of the refrigerating unit because of the surrounding conditions and so on. What happens is like these are observed to be like very promising. So these PCMs were encapsulated in this particular way. And what happens is this is a cabin where we place this trace, and in this trace actually this milk and everything will be placed. And you can see this particular portion also. Here also you mean that it is like PCM. It is encapsulated, macro encapsulated. So this work is also there, and lot of work is being done on this also. People are trying to come up with different PCMs, so that the loss is minimized and it can keep it at the regulated temperatures for a very long duration. So coming back to this, like after applications, I did discuss about selection criteria. And the previous slides, I did mention that various other things also that I'll be showing you. One is like congruent or congruent melting and phase segregation. The name itself will tell you phase segregation means you can distinguish the phases, which is not advisable. Phase segregation should be as minimum as possible, and it should be thermally stable and it should be compactable. So how to do these studies, I'll be showing you. Next, I'll be going with briefly, I'll be explaining about various equipment that we can make use of to find the thermophysical properties. So first, what do you mean by compatibility? There comes the question. Generally, if you take this is a shell and tube heat exchanger, inside you can see wherever I am pointing on, there PCM is placed. And what happens is the heat transfer fluid like water is getting circulated, and if you want to either cool or heat some water or the working fluid, it can be done. But the point is, once we keep it for a very long time, if the PCM is not compatible with the container material or the tube materials, then it will lead to corrosion. So this is how a corroded tubes like. Actually, there is a surface corrosion, there is actually a pitting corrosion. So pitting means holes will be formed. Maybe within 5 to 10 minutes, I'll even discuss briefly about that also. What do you mean by that and how it happens and how to do it. So what do you mean by phase segregation? Generally, I did mention inorganic or salt hydrate PCMs undergo phase segregation or sulfuric effect. So usually this is sodium acetate trihydrate. This is work done in our lab itself. It is kept in a high temperature oil bath. What does a high temperature oil bath do is like it maintains, if you place some water or some any oil, we can maintain constant temperature. This is a spherical ball, glass container where sodium acetate trihydrate. Usually it is a PCM whose melting point is around 45 approximately in that particular range. It is kept at 80 degrees centigrade for 10 hours. You can still see certain portion only got liquefied, but other portion is still in solid phase. I hope you can visualize this. This is still solid, but it is kept for 10 hours. Now what happened is we tried to see like by keeping it outside, that means cooling. So the temperature, room temperature was around from 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. As melting point of this PCM is around 45 degrees centigrade, so it should get solidified. But when we kept for 2 days also, it did not get solidified. We even kept for this picture is taken for after 2 days, but we tried to keep even for 5 days and 6 days also. But still, you can see there are some crystals that are there, and water also got separated out. This is actually called phase segregation. So the main problem is we should not be having these kind of things, especially it should not be there with our PCM. Okay, so these phase segregation should be as minimum as possible. Then what is the solution for this? For example, you have a very promising PCM. Then what they do is they act nucleating agents such that it will get solidified. There is something called homogeneous nucleation or heterogeneous nucleation. A lot of work is being done on this also, like how to avoid this phase segregation. Next, thermal stability. See, this is the experimental setup. This is one heater, high temperature oil bath, and this is a refrigerator unit. We placed some PCMs here. For example, if you have a PCM, we are using this PCM in a solar water heating system, let us take. And each day we heat it, cool it, right? So if we heat, cool for several number of cycles, is there any degradation of these PCMs? That is actually called thermal stability. So what we did is we placed a PCM in the spherical containers, and first we heated up to 80 degrees centigrade so that it totally get melted. Next, we stop the pump where this heater is stopped, and chilled water, which is maintained nearly at 10 degrees centigrade, 15 degrees centigrade, is being circulated. Like this, what we did is we heat, cooled, like that. Several thousands of cycles we did, heating, cooling, and so on. Obviously, there is a data acquisition system. By using switches, what we did is we programmed such that this heating and cooling process takes place. So what it is observed is, this is the curve where at n is equal to 0, that means fresh PCM. After going 1000 cycles, this is what we observed. And for 1500 cycles, it is gone. There is a change. This is for lauric acid. So what we can observe is, that is why if you are using a PCM based thermal equipment, it will work very well during the initial days. But as days progress, what is going to happen is there is a chance that the performance of the PCM based thermal equipment will come down. So for that, what we need to do is, before applying a PCM for any equipment, we have to do these thermal stability studies also. You can observe. So usually this is the portion what we have is latent heat. So if this is coming down, for whatever we have designed, that may not work well. So thermal studies also are very important. Okay. Now I'll be quickly going through. This is basically to give some awareness. What are the various thermophysical properties and how to find? So that if someone is interested to do this, these things are available in IISc Bangalore. There is something called, if you type SAFE, Sophisticated Analytical Instrumentation Facility, SAIF. So it is there in IISc Bangalore and few IITs, and some of the NITs are also available. So what we can do is, your PCM can be tested, or you can get the melting point and latent heat by on a nominal basis. If it is an academic institute, they will charge relatively less. If it is like a commercial or like some company or something, the charge will be more. So this is for researchers who want to work on, or who want to start working on PCMs. So this will give a very good information. So especially melting point, latent heat, and specific heat values, we can get through differential scanning calorimetry. This is called actually short form DSC. Usually what is happening is, you do heat input to the PCM. So when you have a phase change that is taking place, this 5 mg sample PCM takes the heat. That is why you get some dip here like this. So this is actually called onset temperature. This is called onset temperature. If you want some PCM which has very high, very sharp melting point, this width of this particular portion should be minimum. So if it is becoming more, this end and this end is becoming more differences there, that means we don't have PCM that has very sharp melting point. So here the melting started and it got ended here. And the area under this particular curve will give you latent heat. So what does it do is, once we do DSC, they will give this curve to us. So what we need to do is, or some of the softwares are available. So we can get this. Here I have given few things. We will get this data also. Generally, onset temperature, what I take is, there is some contradiction in literature also. Some people take onset temperature as melting point temperature. Some people take like average of onset and onset as melting point temperature. But what I do, and some of the researchers do, is they take onset temperature itself as a melting point. And this is what is latent heat, 179.60 kilojoules per kg. So now what is going to happen is, don't worry why it is negative sign, because it is taking the heat, it has come down. Okay, in the same way, you can get the specific heat also. Some of the equipment DSCs have inbuilt software for the CP value, or we need to do separate experiment for this. So from this itself, we can get CP value for solid and liquid states. Now, this is nothing but viscometer. Usually, this is not specifically designed for PCMs. It has two concentric cylinder. In the annulus, we generally place this PCMs, and one of the annulus will be heated, and because of which it gets melted. And now, one of the cylinder gets rotated here, and whatever shear stress that we have, depending upon that, this viscosity is calculated. This is one method by which we can get the viscosity value. Now, this is available at NIT Warangal. We call this thing as TPS 500. We call this thing as thermal conductivity analyzer. Usually, this is a sample holder where we place this PCM, and this has some cavity inside. And this is nothing but your sensor. This is what you can see here. The sensor is placed and sandwiched between the two sample holders where the PCM is filled. Now what happens is once we start this sensor will liberate some heat, and parallelly it will measure the temperature. Based upon the temperature gradients, we can find the thermal conductivity of it. This is TPS 500S. Now, actually, density of solid, this is one such method where we can find, we can be used with pycnometer. Pycnometer is nothing but a Borosian cylinder. Usually, it is of 25 ml. And N-dodecane is used for this. Why? Because it does not mix with the PCMs. So, in the same way, what happens is initially the empty pycnometer will be measured. That means weight will be measured. And after that, what happens is we add dodecane, and then we will again weigh it. Then we add PCM. So, if you know the mass of it based upon the volume change, as it does not, dodecane does not mix with PCM, we can get the volume, and based upon this, we can get the density. So the equipment that we can use, one of the method is by using pycnometer. So thermal expansion coefficient, actually thermal expansion coefficient is also very, very important. Why? Because, for example, obviously there is a density difference between solid state and liquid state. So if we are placing a PCM in solid state, and once this heat is given to the PCM, it should be converting to liquid phase. But if the thermal expansion coefficient value is very high, there is a chance that the heat exchanger may burst, or because the volume is increasing, there is no space for a particular volume, it may actually spoil. So we need to know the thermal expansion, and this thermal expansion value should be as minimum as possible. So now what is going to happen is, if you see, initially this is placed in some Borosian cylinder, okay, and this is kept in a hot bath, and temperature is measured. Now this hot bath temperature is increased. Let us take from 70 degrees centigrade to 90 degrees centigrade. So because of the change in temperature, what happens is the volume change will be there. So this is given as fluid volume minus initial volume and change in temperature. We get the thermal expansion coefficient, and this thermal expansion coefficient should be as minimum as possible. So based upon the equipment, these are for some of the low temperature schistose materials, lauric acid, myristic, stearic, palmitic, paraffin wax, sodium acetate trihydrate. These were measured, and you can see all these values are given here. In the same way, what we need to do is, if you want to use a PCM for an application, it is necessary for us to find the thermophysical properties of that PCM. If it is already available in literature, there might be some variation because of the change in purity values. So this is the last one which I would like to briefly explain. So this I have already explained. This is a shell and tube heat exchanger. So what we did is, like we considered copper, aluminum, and stainless steel, and tried to see whether this PCMs, whatever list I have given there, does it corrode or not. We tried to see. The method that we followed is like immersion corrosion test. What is immersion corrosion test is? Actually, this is a fixture that we made, and these are nothing some boil tubes, small glass tubes that you have here. In these glass tubes, we placed a PCM, and in that PCM, we placed this metal samples. And because generally, if you take any thermal equipment, this PCM will be there, and this PCM will be in contact with this particular container materials. Generally, most of the thermal equipment will be metals. Most commonly used are aluminum, copper, and stainless steel. That is why we use this one. So now this is the mass loss that we have. Corrosion rate is observed in this way. This area, because there is insignificant change of area, so this will be in the same manner, and percentage of mass loss is calculated in this way. So what is going to happen is this is SEM, where we need to see this surface corrosion. Or corrosion, it is not only about measuring, it is also about like how can we find whether it is pitting corrosion, whether it is surface corrosion. That is why we need to take the pictures, high resolution pictures on the surface by using SEM. SEM is scanning electron microscope. So initially copper, and this is at 80 degrees centigrade, because if you take any solar water heating system also, the average temperature will be around room temperature to that of like 80 degrees centigrade. So we try to see what is this corrosion rate, but actually you can observe with respect to time the corrosion rate decreased. Why? Because of the formation of oxide layer on the surface. In the same way for aluminium, it is observed like paraffin wax and all the things. But some of the things it decreased and then increased. Why? Because of pitting action. I'll show you these things in terms of like pictures, SEM images. So this is out of all copper, aluminium, and stainless steel. Stainless steel, this magnitude is very, very less. So we can get purely based upon the mass loss. From that, we can get the corrosion rate. So if you observe, like in a nutshell, if you want to understand, copper has huge corrosion. Okay, aluminum is next, and stainless steel is actually negligible. But the main problem is with stainless steel, the thermal conductivity is less when compared to aluminum and copper. So it is good at one side and bad at the other side. So especially if you are using stainless steel, we have to go for some thermal conductivity enhancement techniques. And usually at room temperature, the corrosion rate is less. So these are some of the images. This is with aluminium. So this is after 80 days. So what you can observe is there is so many holes here. So you can observe here. So these are actually called pits. I showed you before, like this is a surface corrosion, and actually when you have pits, some small hole will be formed like this. So it is not actually advisable when compared to surface corrosion. Pitting is more dangerous. Why? Because like if you have some water, heat transfer fluid that is circulated through the tubes, and surrounding that particular tube, if you are having PCM, so this water will pass through these pits and it mixes with the PCM and it will retard its properties. That means for whatever we have designed, it may not work for it. But if you see for copper, it is more like surface corrosion. It heated surface. But for aluminium, it is observed to be pitting corrosion was dominant. This is for stainless steel. It is almost like negligible corrosion was there. It was observed to be like very, very good. And sometimes what happened is some of them did ask me, sir, when we add this PCM with some copper also, our PCM color itself is getting changed. So why? Because actually copper reacts with some of the PCMs. So is it different, or why that is means? Actually, because of the surface corrosion, copper, you can see here, it is almost like greenish color has come here. Okay, but some of the paraffin wax and sodium acetate it remained the same. But especially with the lauric acid and some of the PCMs, what happened is the color changed to pale yellow and so on. Actually, that means like corrosion is taking place, and you can see this becomes very, very necessary for our understanding and why it is happening and so on. Why? Because previously, according to general conclusions, we came to know that generally organic PCMs does not corrosion rate is less. But if you see this lauric acid is also organic PCMs. It comes under fatty acid group, but still it is corroding a lot. Okay, you will see this myristic acid with this one. So then, okay, from visual observation point of view and surface characteristics, it is fine, it is okay. But whether it is recommended or not, how to know this? Actually, there is one research article which even from industrial guidelines are there, whether to use this metal with this PCM or not. People have given some guidelines. So if the corrosion rate is less than 0.2, actually you can go for long-term service. If it is between 0.3 to 9.9, it is okay. Like you can still go for long-term service. But if you have like a 10 to 49, it is caution recommended. That means in regular intervals you need to check for maintenance. And if it is like 50 to 99, it is not recommended for 1 year, greater than 1 year. And 100 to 99, actually it is not recommended more than a year. Actually, if it is greater than 1000, you should not use that one at all. So based on our study, what we can understand is some of the PCMs cannot be directly employed with this, but most of the PCMs are like compatible with this stainless steel. So you can go with stainless steel, but obviously you need to go for thermal conductivity and aspect. And one more thing, there is a special sign here, exclamatory and cross. Actually, this corrosion rate for this particular combination for aluminum is within the limits. But what happened is, based upon the SEM images, there were several pits that are formed, which is not at all advisable. So that is why it is even not recommended greater than 1 year due to pit action. So we have come to conclusions part. We try to see like the basics of phase change materials, what is a PCM, and various applications for it, and along with thermophysical properties, what other factors that we need to look in. That is what we have briefly discussed in our presentation. So generally, due to high latent heat and nearly a constant phase stage temperature, PCMs can be employed in several applications to make the system more compact and efficient. This is one of the main reason why we are using PCM. Melting point and latent heat are primary selection criteria for PCMs. Along with these things, it is very much necessary for us to go with melting and solidification. Why? Because we did see about phase segregation, compatibility, that means corrosion, thermal stability. As we go for more number of cycles, what happens is the properties of this material may get changed, which may finally lead to the failure of this particular equipment. So along with these things, it is necessary for us to study these aspects also for long-term and efficient usage of the thermal equipment. As we have seen from compatibility studies and even like basic properties of PCM, the thermal conductivity of PCMs are generally very low. So now, because of this drawback and other promising feature, lot of work is being done even on usage of fins, metal form. Metal form is like porous media, nanoparticles, and so on. But there is a huge, like several problems on this also. That is why this is one of the hot area to work on. And one more thing, eutectics is another area. Why? Because very less work is there. Because you need to go for like different combinations, which is time consuming and it is a costly affair. A lot of insight need to be obtained. That is why this is also one small area where you can combine different PCMs and understand or finally come out with the most promising option. Okay, with this I will like to conclude my presentation. If there is any query, like I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful talk. So the participants who wish to interact with the professor or who wish to ask any questions, they can raise hand or they can text in chat box so that we will unmute.
Sir, I could not see any chat box here. They can actually directly go with the question itself. Why? Because I am not able to see anything here, only my PPT.
I will read, sir. There is
Okay.
one question from Abdul Kaladgi.
Okay.
The question is PCM for solar flat collector.
Okay. Hi, Abdul. Actually, PCM is severely, I mean to say, like it is being tried in a very intensive manner, especially to reduce the size of the collector. Especially, I have given a list of like 6 PCMs, something like lauric acid, palmitic acid, paraffin wax, sodium acetate trihydride, myristic acid, stearic acid. Generally, these 6 PCMs are considered to be like very promising. But to my observation, if I am studying melting and solidification, compatibility, thermal reliability, what I could observe is like paraffin wax is very much suitable.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please.
There is one more question from Mr. KCH Kishore Kumar, sir.
Okay.
Please differentiate the panel-based solar water heater and PCM-based solar water heater in terms of efficiency and cost.
Panel based means I could not understand properly.
Sir Kishore, sir.
Hello.
Sir
Hello,
Kishore,
Mr.
sir.
Kishore.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, actually, the solar based, sir. Solar panel based water heater and PCM based water heater is to be installed in a household purpose, sir, for the same
Okay.
water capacity.
Okay. So, like what you are asking here is like, please correct me if I am wrong.
Sir, in
So,
terms
if
of
you are in, yeah, actually,
efficiency, in terms of cost, I need comparison between those two, sir. Which is more efficient in terms of
okay.
heating capacity point of view and cost comparison, sir.
Okay. So, actually, what we are doing in water heating system is first I will go with like solar PV panel. Usually, the PV panels, the efficiency is around like hardly around 15% or even less than that. That is what we have solar radiation, the amount of electricity that we are getting, to that of radiation that is instant on the collector. So here we have high grade energy, and you are converting this electricity again in terms of like heating water, which is again not efficient. But especially what happens is if you have like enough solar radiation in infrared regime, so going for solar flat plate collector is more efficient. I mean to say now whatever flat plate collectors that they are fabricating, the best one is around like 45 nearly that particular efficient. So if you want hot water alone, I do prefer solar flat plate collector is a better option to go for. And one more thing here that we need to understand is here the hardness of water you should maintain. If you are not properly maintaining the or regulating the hardness of the water, then you need to have a frequent maintenance for it. The coils and everything, pipes and everything gets corroded very fast. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Sir, cost, sir? Cost comparison.
Actually, now even cost comparison point of view, I cannot exactly say, but approximately I'll come back with that. See, like photovoltaic panel, you need to have batteries.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because and one more thing is that its efficiency is that you need to go for a couple of panels.
Yes, sir.
And the cost of the panels like monocrystalline and everything, each panel can go for around like 7,000 and so on also. So for this, if you want to use whenever you are in need of, you need to again make use of batteries. That is necessary.
Okay, sir.
So maintenance of battery also becomes one of the major problems because you might be seeing your lithium-ion batteries for mobile or even for laptop. It does not work for years together. Even hardly 1.5 years it will come, and after that it will slowly its performance will come down.
Yes, sir.
So from cost point of view, I do prefer solar water heating system, flat plate collector system.
Okay, sir.
And even maintenance also.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, Dr. Ramakrishna Garu, you can speak, sir.
Sir, Jekishan sir.
Yeah. Good
Sir,
morning, Dr. Ramakrishna.
I am Ramakrishna sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir,
please
my doubt is, if the material has a highest specific, then it can store or absorb more amount of the energy. But if the material has the highest thermal conductivity, then it can transfer more amount of the heat instead of storing energy. How can we balance these two properties while selecting the PCM?
So one thing is that we want PCM which has very high thermal conductivity. That is for sure.
Okay,
But what is happening is if you take some metal alloys and so on, usually those latent heat will be less.
okay.
So that is why, especially in PCM, lot of work is being done how to enhance the thermal conductivity. That is why we have huge scope to work on. So usually what happens is that is one drawback that PCM is facing now. Either you have to go for like fins, go for metal forms, go for nanoparticles. So this is one of the very active area now. That means nano encapsulated PCM.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
Sir, there is one question from Mr. C.H. Venugopal garu. How to
Yes.
improve thermal stability of PCMs?
Yeah, generally, if you take any pure PCM, you need to definitely study thermal stability. So, in case like if it is not thermally stable, sometimes we may need to add some nucleating agents. And one more thing is that people did observe to avoid this problem, people did use like different combination of organic, inorganic PCMs, and people went for like utility mixtures. So even that is the reason why if you are selecting any PCM, we have to do this step. Otherwise, this phase segregation issue will come. So people are trying to add different nucleating agents, and it can be homogeneous nucleation or heterogeneous nucleation, and try to avoid this problem. Even one such example for this is sodium acetate trihydride. So bentonite and few nucleagents are being added to overcome this issue. Thickening agents also.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mahesh, you can speak now. You can ask, sir.
Yes, sir. So, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Hello.
So you told about like solar energy and all. So, but actually there are various kinds of energy sources. But why like the people or the society are stressing on the solar energy itself? Why don't we go for geothermal or wind energy? That is also one source. What are
Right.
the obstacles they are facing, sir?
Yeah, very nice question, Mr. Mahesh. Actually, one thing is that its availability. First, that is the point.
Okay, sir.
And one thing, see, usually wind energy, it is also not a continuous thing.
Yes, sir.
And another aspect is like energy density that we can have,
Okay.
and overall cost that is involved.
Mhm.
Especially if you are going for geothermal,
Yes, sir.
it is not the same in all the places. For example, if you go, if I'm not wrong, some 1 kilometer or so, you can get a temperature difference of 20 degrees centigrade, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Correct.
Yeah. So now what is going to happen is the cost that is involved and the sites, that means location.
Yeah.
If you have more gradient, then it is okay to some extent. If you have some relatively better option when compared to the other aspects, then obviously people will
Okay.
go for it because maintenance point of and everything is less. So especially from Indian context, we are concentrating on two things. One is solar, another thing is wind energy. So, but wind also, it is not available in all the places. For example, some parts of like Anantapur, there are several windmills, I guess. And even in some parts of Tamil Nadu, what they need to do is that they need to do some study of around minimum some 6 to 7 years of survey, wind velocity data, wind direction data, and everything. And people will even go for like cost point of view. And from solar point of view also, like most of the parts of India, we are blessed with very good solar resource. So when compared to other options, the solar is considered to be a promising option. And one more point I would like to add, in solar also we have PV panel and solar thermal systems. Generally, PV panel, if you just place on our terrace, life is expected to be around 20 years. So that, but if you need to only maintenance that you have is like clean the panels, like when dust and everything is there. But solar thermal systems have some maintenance issue, and one of the problem is heat storage. Now, maybe like for the past 10 years or so, the solar PV panel only lot of research was done. Because of the thermal maintenance issues and all these problems, solar thermal system was given less preference. But these days, especially for the past 2 or 3 years, people started considering this. Why? Because solar panels also after 20 years it needs to be disposed, but it is not environmental friendly. That is another problem. So by considering all these aspects, people are going for like which one is good for us from cost point of view. That is the main important aspect. And another thing is availability.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So now I request Dr. Suri sir to give concluding remarks for this session.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much to Dr. DJ Krishna sir for your expertise. Sir covered what is meant by PCM, why is PCM required, classifications of PCM and selections of PCM, and what are the merits and demerits of different materials like organic, inorganic, and eclectic materials, and applications of solar energy, types of collectors, medical applications, thermal management of electronic components, thermal stability, measurement of physical properties, procedure for viscosity measurements, and thermal conductivity analysis. Thank you very much, sir. Over to coordinator.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Suri sir. So, on behalf of Mechanical Engineering Department, so we heartily thank Dr. D. J. Krishna Garu for sparing his time and sharing his research knowledge with all our participants. So, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. So, thank you all the
sir.
participants. Thank you all the participants. So, tomorrow we'll meet at the same time at 10:30 for another session, followed by valedictory. Okay. So, thank you all. Thank you all. Have a nice day.
Thank you,
sir.
one and all. Thank you,
sir.
one and all, for your very patient listening. I hope you have enjoyed as well as gained some kind of exposure with PCM.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
So,
Okay.
Thank you all, sir.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.